What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader. And finally, mercifully, the powers that be have listened to us who like The Mandalorian, but have been frustrated by the lack of Mandalorian comic books. Finally, they have announced that The Mandalorian Season One adaptation is coming to comic books. And this is something that dates back to last year on my channel. And I posited to you guys in a video, I said, why have they not just taken season one and adapted it to a comic book series? It's such a no-brainer for Marvel and for Disney to do that, and they would make boatloads of money. Well, it sounds like they finally listened to me and a number of you guys that have all complained about it, because on February 26th, Marvel announced that The Mandalorian is going to be adapted, season one, and here is the cover. This is Adi Granoff, who does a lot of Star Wars covers, a lot of beautiful covers for Star Wars. And I have to be honest with you, I don't particularly like this cover that much. The Mandalorian looks kind of weird and fat. I don't know. It's just a bad angle of him, and I don't particularly like this cover. But that's going to be the main cover. And these are going to be coming out in in June of this year. So we've got about 3 months or so to wait, and start looking at your local comic shops or on eBay or wherever you buy comic books, because I'm sure that we're going to see these go up for pre-order very soon. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to point out a few other comic book related things for The Mandalorian that have been kind of new releases here lately, that I think after their success and the massive number of pre-orders that have happened, Marvel kind of woke up and said, wow, I think that's why we need to go ahead and do the adaptation that everyone's been talking about. So I'm going to go through that in a little while and give you some other ideas if you don't want to wait till June for a comic book. But this adaptation will be The Mandalorian's first full comic book appearance. And there are some cover appearances that I'm going to show you and things like that. But in terms of the actual contents of the comic book, unless there's some major surprise that happens within the various Star Wars lines of comics that are out right now, like Crimson Reign would probably make the most likely choice, or War of the Bounty Hunter, something like that. But my guess is that Marvel realizes that there is a lot of pent-up demand for The Mandalorian and his first comic book appearance, that they're not going to spoil it. They're going to make this the official first release, and I bet that there'll be a number of different exclusive covers. As I said, this is the first cover that's been released in terms of how it's going to look. I personally don't like it, but I'm sure there's going to be incentive covers, like 1 in 25, 1 in 15s, whatever, 1 in 50s. And I would imagine there will also be some various retail, like comicmint.com exclusives and things like that. So I would just encourage you to keep an eye out for that. But it's just amazing to me that it's taken this long. They did have a tie-in novel that was announced that was eventually canceled. And it's just crazy that it's taken this long. But let's go over some other Mandalorian-related comic books before we kind of dig into why I think Marvel decided to go ahead and finally release that adaptation of Season 1. If you want the first mention ever of Mandalorians, not the Mandalorian, not Din Djarin, but I'm talking about Mandalorians as, the creed and that group of warriors, that would be Star Wars number 68, obviously. This is a key issue within the vintage Marvel run. It's the origin of... It's kind of like the origin of Boba Fett. It's the first full appearance of Dengar the Bounty Hunter, the first appearance of Fen Shiza, a Mandalorian, the first mention of Mandalorians. This is a very expensive book, obviously, and one of the main keys within the vintage run. For a CGC 9.8, you're probably running $1,500 to $1,800 right now for the direct edition. I have seen the newsstand sell as high as like $2,600, but I think that now that the Book of Boba Fett is over with, I'm already seeing a pullback in Star Wars number 42, which is Boba Fett's first comic book appearance. I would imagine that 68 is going to follow suit. I haven't really been tracking this comic closely since the Book of Boba Fett ended, but I would have guessed that that's probably going to drop in price here soon, too. We'll see. Another one to look at is Star Wars Insider Magazine number 200. It's got some really beautiful cover art by Peach Momoko, who is a pretty well-known comic book artist. There's a number of different variants for this. There is a foil cover with kind of the writing up top is in foil. There's also a Virgin exclusive cover that I think is a Frankie's Comics exclusive, but don't quote me on that. I have seen a number of these graded by CGC and up for sale. In a 9.8, they can go for kind of 85 to 150, depending on which cover. The Virgin obviously goes more expensive, but that's not really a comic book, right? That's a trade magazine, or a magazine of sorts. But that's another option if you want it. In terms of Din Djarin's first true comic appearance, that would be this one. This one just came out last month in February, and that's Star Wars Darth Vader number 20. This is the Sprouse 50th anniversary Lucasfilm variant. Chris Sprouse makes a number of different kind of celebratory 50th anniversary covers, and I don't think that Marvel was expecting the reception that it did. Comic book collectors realized that this is the first comic book cover appearance of Din Djarin and Grogu, and collectors went wild for it. It sold out immediately, and they actually released a second printing of this Sprouse variant, which is extremely rare. That never happens. I've got this one pre-ordered in a 9.8 already, so that's coming from Mutant Beaver Comics, but they've already been selling very consistently the 9.8 pre-sales anywhere from $90 to about $130 US. The second print is in silver. That one also is available and out there. It's not nearly as expensive, obviously, because it's a second print. But that's the first time to my knowledge, in my memory, that one of these 50th anniversary Sprouse covers received such demand that it got a second print. It just doesn't happen. But the gold trim is the original version, and then the quote-unquote Beskar Armor Silver Edition is the second print. But that really kind of took collectors by surprise, and the demand also took Marvel by surprise. Insider Magazine number 195 is another one that has Grogu on the cover, a pretty clean cover there. That's one I hadn't seen before, but I found that when I was looking on Key Collector Comics. Another one that's coming out this month, March, that I've already pre-ordered is Star Wars Darth Vader number 21. This is going to be the first comic book cover appearance of Moff Gideon with the Darksaber, as well as the Dark Troopers. So this is going to be a really, really hot book, in my opinion. I've already pre-ordered a bunch of raw copies. I think I got like 8 or 10 or something like that. It's a fantastic cover, and I would definitely look into picking that one up or pre-ordering that one. Another one that has also been a massive pre-seller is this one. This is Star Wars Dr. Aphra number 19. This is, again, a Sprouse cover variant. And this one is the first comic book cover appearance of Bo-Katan Kryze. So this one is available still on eBay. ANZ Comics, who I buy a lot of my books from, has it available for pre-sale for it's $10. You might be able to find it cheaper elsewhere. I don't know, but 131 are available with him. There's 69 that have sold. I've already pre-ordered one of these in a 9.8 also, because I think that this is an important book, given that Bo-Katan really hasn't had much of a comic book appearance. She had one appearance in a very, very early kind of web-only web online exclusive pre-order comic that dates back to like the Clone Wars. It's several years old and very expensive and not very plentiful. She was also mentioned in in Bounty Hunters number 14, I believe. That was just a mention though, but this is her first cover appearance, and I think that this is worth picking up. So again, that's Dr. Aphra number 19. It's supposed to come out in March of this year. So that's another Mandalorian-related comic to look for. Here's another one that's coming out, I think tomorrow. Don't quote me on that, but this is the Star Wars number 21 Sprouse variant. That's the first comic book cover appearance of Quill and IG-11. Now, keep in mind, all of these Sprouse cover variants, there's nothing Mandalorian related within the comic. It's just the covers. So for people like me, while I love these, and I certainly have bought a number of them, you got to keep in mind that the actual contents of the Season 1 adaptation that's coming out in June is really the first true comic content for The Mandalorian and all these characters from Season 1. But the demand for all of these Sprouse cover variants has changed Marvel's outlook on how they do these. They've recently announced that these Sprouse cover variants moving forward are going to be retail incentive variants. So 1 in 25 variants. So for every Star Wars number 21 that just has the standard cover, You're going to have to buy 25 of those in order for the local comic shops. So we'll have to buy 25 of those in order to get one of these Sprouse cover variants. So these are going to become a lot more exclusive and a lot more expensive than they already are right now. These typically don't go for a massive price premium over the regular covers. These particular Mandalorian ones have, because they are first cover appearances. But just keep in mind that you can expect moving forward that Marvel recognizes the demand for these, and they have moved over to a retail incentive structure for these Sprouse cover variants. Now, what's going to happen with that Mandalorian adaptation? Is it going to go up in value? I don't know the answer to that. I don't. I think a lot of it's going to be tied to how many different covers there are. As you guys remember, for War of the Bounty Hunters, there were like 40 different covers for War of the Bounty Hunters Alpha. Probably another 25 or 30 for War of the Bounty Hunters issue number 1. But is the adaptation of Season 1, we already know what happens in Season 1, so these comics are really just a rehash, right? Are they going to follow the same path that the adaptations for other Star Wars content have had? And I don't know the answer, but I wanted to at least show you what 2 other adaptations have done recently, and that would be Rogue One adaptation issue number 1. Now, you got to keep in mind there's a couple of factors that have affected this book. This is the first comic book appearance, obviously, of Jen Erso and director Krennic and Saul Guerrera, but more importantly, it's also the first appearance of Cassian Andor and K2SO, and they have their own show coming out right now. So I think that's partially why this book has gone up in price a little bit, is with anticipation that the Cassian Andor show is going to be good, and I think it will be. And what used to be about $100 to $150 book, it's now selling for $200 to $250 or higher, depending on which cover variant you have. But that's one adaptation that there's potential that the Mandalorian's Season 1 adaptation comic series, at least the first issue, could follow this path in terms of pricing. The other one, obviously, is Solo adaptation issue number 1. And that one is gone up quite a bit in value lately. But I think it's beyond just the fact that this is the adaptation. This is the first comic book appearance of not only the young Lando, who has his own show coming out, but more importantly, Qi'ra. Qi'ra, played by Emilia Clarke, has made her reappearance within the Crimson Reign comic book series. And there's been a lot of heavy rumors that Emilia Clarke is going to be reprising her role either in a standalone show or in one of the other current shows that's on Disney Plus for Qi'ra. And as a result, this book has really taken off a little bit. $275 is actually low. This sale dates back from December, but the last sale has been closer to $400. I couldn't find the listing for some reason, but the last sale for Solo adaptation issue number 1 for this cover was around $400. And, Emilia Clarke has made it very clear that she wants to be involved in comic books. She came out with her own comic series called Mother of Madness. That was largely panned. It didn't do very well. But I think her goal is to have her own intellectual property that she could then kind of spin off into a Netflix show of some sort. But I think that given that her Mother of Madness comic book series didn't really take off like she had hoped, it didn't really hit home with comic collectors. The first month, it sold fairly decently, but after that, it's kind of dropped off the face of the earth. But I think that given her lack of success with that book, but her desire, that she's made it very clear that she wants to have some kind of Netflix series, she might go back and revisit Qi'ra's role, either, as I mentioned, in a standalone show for Qi'ra, maybe related to Crimson Dawn, maybe related to The Mandalorian, who knows. But it seems like her schedule's cleared up, and I could easily see Qi'ra making her way back to Disney Plus, and as a result, the book has gone up quite a bit. But will the Mandalorian Season 1 adaptation issue number 1 take this path? I don't know. It's going to be heavily bought. I can promise you that, from collectors. It's going to be heavily speculated, but I would just be cautious about going overboard with it. I'm not going to buy any until I see some of the other cover variants and some of the other retail incentive covers to see what they do before I dive in with some of the purchases for pre-orders for the Season 1 adaptation of The Mandalorian. But I thought it was kind of interesting information and worth sharing. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back soon.